Hey, Tim.
Hey, Andrew, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go for it.
Cool. All right, so I've heard your teachings about like eternal rewards, how there's really no hierarchy of all that.
Yeah.
And I'm totally on board there.
Yeah.
But I'm just reading through Matthew 5, specifically in verse 19. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of these commandments and teaches others according will be called least in the kingdom of heaven.
Yes.
Whoever practices and teaching these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just kind of stumbling on those verses now. So I guess can you just explain, how it's like least in the kingdom of heaven and higher and all that?
Sure. Yeah. All of this, the whole point of it is you can't do it. I mean, they've come to him. The disciples have, on another instance, show us how to be great in the kingdom of heaven. How can we be first in the kingdom of heaven? He says the first will be last and the last will be first. Here, he's done everything from, say, cut off your hand, pluck out your eye, be perfect, sell everything, he says, to the rich young ruler who thinks he's doing great. So I would say that Jesus is doing a fantastic job at confusing people who think that they can arrive at righteousness through achievement. I mean, even the verse that you're talking about here, Tim, look at the very next verse. He says, "For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you certainly will not enter the kingdom of heaven." So everybody's imagining, wait a minute, the Pharisees, no, those are the ones who are working the hardest among us. I mean, me as an Israelite, an average Jewish person, I would look over at the Pharisees, the scribes, the people that are dedicated and committed and sold out. Oh, those are the super spiritual ones. Those are the most righteous of all. They're constantly memorizing from the law, applying the law, obeying the law, teaching others the law. I mean, this is the creme de la creme. This is the cream of the crop. This is the best Israel has to offer. And you're telling me that my righteousness has to surpass theirs? How am I going to get there? There's no way to do it. And so you see the spirit in which he is saying these things. So that's what he's saying here when he says, the first will be last, the last will be first. You want to be called great? Well, here's how you get called great. Here's all you got to do to be called great. All you have to do is teach and practice every bit of the law. 613 commands, that's it, Tim. Just wake up every day and memorize those 600 plus rules and regulations and practice those 600 rules and regulations and then teach others to do the same. And don't be a hypocrite now. Make sure you're consistent, dedicated, committed. How committed? Even more committed than the Pharisees. Otherwise, you can forget it, Tim. So do you see what's happening? They're reading this and they don't go away with they're listening to this, they don't go away with a nice warm feeling, like that nice warm Italian feeling you get inside after a good bowl of pasta. No, they are walking away from this conversation with that gulp in their throat. They're feeling like there's no hope. And maybe, just maybe, that's the whole point. Jesus wants to show them there is no hope under the law. Now, 2 verses prior, he said, I didn't come to abolish the law. I came to fulfill it. And then he says, none of the law has disappeared. So do you get it? The law is not dead. The law is not gone. All of the law is here. Not a single bit of it has disappeared. It's 613 laws staring you in the face. You've got to achieve perfection. If you want to be called great, in fact, if you even want to get into the kingdom at all, then well, your righteousness better surpass the greatest experts you've ever known in your life, because that is the standard that the law requires. Don't understand me yet, Jesus might say? Don't get it yet? Well, let me explain further. If you get angry, it's the same as murder. So don't murder, but also don't blow up at anybody. If you do, you're guilty of murder. Oh, you haven't committed adultery lately? Well, I tell you, if you even look at somebody with lust, you've done the same. So how are we doing? You see? I mean, how are we doing? Nobody survives the Sermon on the Mount. It is a killer sermon. It is the impossible teachings of Jesus. He is showing that the law is a perfect and impossible standard. By this standard, Tim, exactly 0 people would be called great in the kingdom of heaven. And by the way, is that our goal, to be called great in the kingdom of heaven? Isn't Jesus the one we're going to be calling great? Do you think Paul is running around beating his chest in heaven saying, look at how great I am? The whole thing is written to show that anyone who approaches righteousness from a human perspective, trying to be greater, not lesser, trying to be the best, not the worst, trying to get in through achievement like the scribes and Pharisees, that they might as well forget the whole thing. So this is not a sermon inviting Christians to do your best, and don't you worry, God will grade on a curve in the end. You just try your hardest. No, if you were trying your hardest, you'd end up in an amputation ward at the local hospital. Your eye would be plucked out, your hand would be chopped off. And by the way, I mean, he's here threatening hell 3 times in Matthew 5. 3 times hell is threatened in the Sermon on the Mount, and yet Christians don't go to hell. Furthermore, he says you're going to be answerable to the Sanhedrin. Well, I don't know about you, Tim, but I certainly haven't hung out with the Sanhedrin lately. They're a Jewish council from 2,000 years ago. Lastly, he says when you're going to the altar to give your animal sacrifice, make sure you get right with your brother first. Now, when's the last time you offered an animal sacrifice? Well, for me, never, right? Christians, we don't offer animal sacrifices. We look to the cross. So by the time you've made it through this sermon, he's warned about hell 3 times. He's warned about the Sanhedrin Jewish Council. He's warned about animal sacrifices. He's told you got to compete and win against the Pharisees. I think we're starting to get the picture, right? This sermon is directed at the proud, even arrogant Jews of his day who thought they could achieve self-righteousness, and he is setting the bar at an impossible height so that no one can do it. And that's the whole point. Otherwise, they'll never see their need for God's grace. So, Tim, I want to put you back on and see if that helps. Does that help some?
Yeah, that helps me understand. Like, this passage isn't really meant to be kind of illustrating what heaven's going to be like, but it's more meant to just show the Pharisees that they're not going to get saved by obeying their laws and oral traditions they're kind of adding.
You got it. You got it, brother. That is it. Crystal clear in your mind, I can tell. I appreciate your call tonight. Reach out to us again anytime. Great to hear from you.